You could have put any Democrat in that ad.
It's got to have some kind of connection to a fear that you might actually have.
Welcome to another episode of Campaign Experts React, where we break down 2020 election ads and political media, explain what the people behind them are trying to accomplish, and decide whether or not they did a good job. I'm Dan Pfeiffer, former communications director for Barack Obama. Joining me today is Faiz Shakir, a veteran of Democratic politics, and most recently, Bernie Sanders' campaign manager. Faiz, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thank you, Dan. Appreciate the invitation.
You're someone who has been on the forefront of Democratic digital strategy your whole career. You ran Bernie Sanders' campaign, which was a very innovative digital-first campaign. What's your philosophy when it comes to how to think about paid advertising in a campaign?
So first of all, Dan, we actually did a novel thing on our campaign. We brought advertising in-house, and you can argue whether that was always the best and most useful task, but we made it happen, and all the ads that we put up on air came through an internal process, and that was driven largely by the candidate, who has some degree of concern over people making money off of advertising. So he wanted to control it all in-house. So I got an intimate journey on it. And my strong view about it is it's not worth doing if you're not persuading somebody. You start with a base of people you anticipate would like and support this, but if you're not bringing others into it, then I'm not sure what the ad is truly trying to accomplish. So that's what I'm always looking for, is whether there's a substantive, emotional component. What's the piece of this that's bringing somebody else into it?
Talk to me a little bit about how you think about the balance between digital ads and television ads, and what, if any, different purposes they serve.
It's easiest to speak to from the perspective of our campaign, which was a person who had 99% name ID in Bernie Sanders. And so what we were trying to do is essentially save up money to be on air first in October, November, December, which ended up being the case. And we could basically drive the last part of the campaign into building the support. A lot of that would be re-energizing people who had supported them last time, but also giving you a flavor of what's interesting and new about it. And so we're trying to tap a moment in the Democratic Party that's not just merely about Donald Trump, but I think increasingly the intersection of economics and racial class narratives. And we were trying to do that with a lot of our advertising. I think it did give us a boost in Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada. And I think if there was one thing I would change in retrospect, and looking back, it's always easiest to play Monday morning quarterback after the fact, but it would be to try to figure out how you do that paid persuasion on why Bernie Sanders was best to take on Donald Trump. I'm not sure you ever get there, but that was certainly one of, at the end of the day, an argument that hurt us and was done in like literally a 3-day window. So we didn't really have much time to kind of recalibrate.
The first ad we're going to watch is a digital spot from Climate Power 2020, an independently run project created by Cap Action, the League of Conservation Voters, and the Sierra Club.
Scientists in China are trying to determine if a new virus strain is responsible for an pneumonia outbreak.
At this point, I think we have to believe this is respiratory.
The chances of this virus showing up in the U.S. are virtually nil.
The risk to the American people remains very low.
So you're right, it is contained.
The coronavirus, which is very well under control in our country.
We're keeping the patients isolated.
The things that I see in the ER are scary.
Worried customers have been snapping up everything in sight.
Global warming is melting the polar ice caps.
2015, 2016, and 2017, 3 of the hottest years on record.
A lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
Our economy is every bit as fragile as the environment.
We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money.
You need to read this, sir.
I mean, do you want me to read it? It's long. It's very long.
Did you, Dan, know any of those movie clips?
One is Contagion, and one is Outbreak in The Day After Tomorrow. Is that one of them too, I think?
Yeah, and I think there was another movie too. I think it was like 2012 or something like that.
Yeah, oh yeah. Who knew that 2012 would be the glory days that we'd want to go back to? Yes. I'm very curious to hear what you think about this spot. Obviously, climate was a huge part of the Sanders campaign and pushing for the Green New Deal. And this is a very different approach. So what do you think about it?
Yeah, so I have a few reactions. First of all, you and I have been in this climate space for a long period of time. And one of the hardest things with an ad on climate in particular is you're trying to make it relevant and emotionally immediate for people, right? Because climate by its nature is this long-term fight, and you're trying to get some immediacy and get voters to care about it as they would, a lot of other domestic issues. And the hook here is just, we're going to tie it to Corona, and it's an interesting kind of conflation of here's the corona chaos in the country, and by the way, climate fits into it somehow. And then it leaves you, I guess, with this, a little bit of Hollywood elements, but it leaves you, let's act on climate. Trump is a buffoon, and off we go. And I do think, like, as someone who cares about climate, I wonder how you can hook people into a solution too.
I was fascinated by this spot because there's sort of been this evolution of climate messaging over the years, right? Like in the early parts of the Obama administration, there was a real sort of the consensus, right or wrong, in the Democratic Party was make it an economic issue, right? Highlight the green jobs, and the climate aspects were a little bit off to the side because climate was polarizing, particularly at a time of double-digit unemployment. The latter half of the Obama administration, 2016, it was, we're going to focus on climate. We're going to make this sort of moral argument about it, sort of the generational obligation. And this is sort of a different approach, which is the scare the living shit out of you approach to it. And I'm really intrigued by the idea of tying it to coronavirus because it ties together the Republicans' failure to prepare for and respond to coronavirus with all of their anti-science climate denialism. And Climate Power shared some of their testing on this ad. And of all the ads they tested, this was the most effective with getting people to care about climate in the short term and to sort of move them against Trump on coronavirus, which is an interesting side effect.
I'm sure it's getting people to care. I wonder, like, how you're driving them to a solution, what you feel like you need to set up. And maybe that's part of a messaging arc that at some point will come later.
The next ad we're going to watch is a positive spot from the Biden campaign.
He took the train 4 hours every day so he could have breakfast with his boys in the morning and tuck them in at night. People in Washington didn't get why Joe Biden would travel all that way. But in neighborhoods all over this country, there's no distance parents won't go for their kids. Never underestimate the power of family or the sacrifices people will make for their children. That love, that hope, that determination, that's what fuels the American dream. It's why you stay up paying bills, sign up for that extra shift, worry about schools and healthcare. When Joe Biden traveled those 4 hours, he wasn't just going home for his kids. He was going to work for them too, just like he will for yours.
This ad was core Biden. We experienced it firsthand, the Bernie campaign, where people know Biden to be a nice guy, quite frankly, and his long reputation. Even if you disagree with him, people just generally see him in a positive light. And I probably underestimate how pervasive and influential that is, the political argument. And it's basically this ad. I mean, you've seen essentially a man grow up in public life and go through the challenges that a family would go through, and it's all been visible to everybody. And there's a sense of decency that surrounds him. It's a character argument. It's the soul of our nation. It's fighting for working class. At some point, I thought it was an Amtrak ad. I mean, it's a very beautiful, touching kind of Amtrak being so core to his identity. But I come away with, like, you build the emotional argument for Biden. I think that's right. You want to make a pro-Biden argument, not just an anti-Trump argument. You're starting it here with a character, build, and then I assume it will at some point grow into other areas that you can anticipate him governing upon.
Even in your campaign, which obviously Bernie Sanders puts, always put the issues ahead of his own story a lot, I think probably sometimes to your chagrin, like you did a lot to layer in who he was. You start with who the person is and what their values are, and then that makes them more credible messengers on policy. Trump's running these negative ads. We're going to watch one in a little bit all across the country on Biden. And Biden isn't necessarily running traditional response ads, but this is really a response ad to all the ads that say Biden is this scary, terrible person. He's a good human being, so why would you? He's not someone to be scared of necessarily. All right, everyone. Elijah and Yale, they've given me these testimonials from the comment section because if you can't trust YouTube commenters, who can you trust? Delicious. Seems like a completely real person, says, Experts React is the best name and you have the best staff for picking it. And Jacob Galecki, who I think might actually be a real person, says, the political commentary is insightful and all that, but we're all just here to experience Dan saying, smash that subscribe button. So, Jacob, this is for you, and not for Yale or Elijah, but smash that subscribe button or something. The last ad we're going to watch is a negative spot from the Trump campaign attacking Joe Biden and the defund police movement.
You have reached the 911 police emergency line. Due to defunding of the police department, we're sorry, but no one is here to take your call. If you're calling to report a rape, please press 1. To report a murder, press 2. To report a home invasion, press 3. For all other crimes, leave your name and number, and someone will get back to you. Our estimated wait time is currently 5 days. Goodbye.
I'm Donald J. Trump, and I approve this message.
I should note this ad is running in Pittsburgh, and the Trump campaign, it's actually been up for a few weeks. They put it up without any sort of fanfare a few weeks ago, which is usually a sign of an ad that a campaign thinks works. What was your take on it?
Weak, honestly. So a few elements here. One is it exemplifies, I think, the failure of the Trump campaign to have a narrative against Biden. I mean, but Biden's name doesn't actually come up in the language of the ad. You see his name on screen, and then you get that crazy malice kind of, imagery. But you really don't get a Biden-centric argument from the narrator about it. It's basically like, hey, look at some of these protesters and the rioters are doing some things that we don't like. And oh, by the way, this is Joe Biden's America. I just don't think that's going to work with somebody who is kind of known. I think anytime you do an emotional prey on fear ad, it's got to have some kind of connection to a fear that you might actually have. And that to me felt like pretty distant from a fear of Biden.
What I took from it was you could have put any Democrat in that ad, right? It's not specific to Biden. And the best attacks have to be specific to the person, believable about the person, right? And this is, like the NRCC oftentimes does like these cookie cutter ads, where they do, it's the same ad where they just cut in the individual candidate, usually like standing next to Nancy Pelosi or something. And this feels like that, which is sort of well below the level of work that a presidential campaign should do.
My assumption, do you tell me if you feel the same way, is that one of the things that they assess as a problem for their campaign is that their own base is not totally fully revved up yet. I mean, and you see a little bit of that kind of trickling down of the poll numbers where a lot of his own base is kind of like getting a little bit apathetic. What I sense here is like, this is just a base-driven ad to just pump the gas and get people to be fearful of Biden.
I imagine they may be, this is sort of a symptom of the Tulsa rally where they may be seeing in their own internal engagement metrics, either online or in their phone calls, diminution of enthusiasm among their base. And this may be a way to sort of spark that. But as you know, the way a really smart campaign works is at the beginning of the process, they sort of do this regression analysis to understand what attributes of their opponent are the most connected to that vote choice. And then they spend months running ads that may not affect the horse race, but are trying to drive down that attribute of their opponent to give you a chance to flip the horse race. For us in 2012, Romney had this huge advantage on the economy at the outset of that race. And we knew everything we did had to be to eliminate his advantage. If we eliminated advantage, he had no chance of winning. And so that's why all of our ads were focused on that. And so I assume, based on that ad, if it is not just a pure base play, the fact that Biden is a quote unquote safe alternative to a whole bunch of people who either voted for Trump or approved of Trump a few months ago, they're going to try to drive that down.
The only line of argument that I've heard from the Trump campaign that they're trying to get to stick to Biden is that he's somehow a puppet of the left. And in that, AOC or Ilhan, Bernie or whoever controls Joe Biden, he can't stand up to them. But even that argument to me, this puppeteering argument seems like such a bank shot. It is so surprising to me that they don't have anything that's kind of directly about Joe Biden and the concerns about what he might do as president of the United States or how he might govern. And they're left with just basically concern trolling about liberal, lefty online agitators.
They've never figured out that A, it's not 2016 anymore, and that Joe Biden is different than all the other people that they thought they'd be running against. And so they at least for right now, and anything can change, I guess, but seem relatively flummoxed by who their opponent is.
I agree.
Faiz, thank you so much for joining us on this absurd YouTube show we have. It's great to talk to you and hope to talk to you again soon.
Thank you, Dan. Appreciate the invitation.
Thanks for watching these ads and videos with us. If you see anything you'd like us to break down next time, let us know in the comments.